Sharma, and I'm in these gorgeous locales of Cananasis. Cananasis is the location where the G7 Leaders Summit is taking place between June 15th and June 17th. The global heads of the biggest economies of the world are going to descend in this place, including the United States President Donald Trump, the French President Emmanuel Macron, and the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. It is a summit that is going to be overshadowed by the Israel-US-Iranian conflict. It is going to be overshadowed by the Ukraine-Russian tensions. It is going to be overshadowed by the Gaza-Israel conflict taking place in the Middle East. So stay tuned on NewsX World with me as I bring you the latest updates from the G7 Leaders Summit.
Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Iran said it hung a convicted Mossad spy amid escalating tensions with Israel, which warned that residents of Tehran will pay for strikes on its civilians as Iran struck Tel Aviv, killing 5 and wounding 92. China has urged de-escalation while oil prices rose for a fourth day in a row. G7 leaders gathered in Canada as tensions rose over the Israel-Iran conflict, with Trump backing Israel's strikes. Europe is calling for calm, Japan condemning Israel, and deep division threatening global unity. Canada and the UK have agreed to form a trade working group to deepen economic ties, expanding cooperation in digital trade, critical minerals, and AI, while also strengthening defense collaboration and support for Ukraine ahead of the G7 summit in Alberta. French President Emmanuel Macron, the first foreign leader to visit Greenland since Trump's annexation threats. He vowed strong EU ties, faster metals cooperation, rejected Greenland's seal, questioned Russia's role in Iran-Israel crisis, and backed Arctic military drills. Trump orders an immigration crackdown targeting Democratic strongholds like Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. Meanwhile, Trump administration is now considering expanding the travel ban to 36 more countries, citing national security threats. The U.S. aircraft carrier USS Nimmits left the South China Sea and is now heading west towards the Middle East amid escalating Iran-Israel tensions after canceling a planned port call in Vietnam due to an emergent operational requirement. An Air India Boeing 787 Dreamliner en route to New Delhi returned to Hong Kong mid-air due to a suspected technical issue, just days after a deadly crash killed 270 people in India, sparking industry scrutiny and casting a shadow over the Paris Air Show that kicked off today. 3 people, including an infant, were killed in Utah carnival shooting by a 16-year-old now in custody. Meanwhile, in Minnesota, a man dressed as a police was arrested for killing a Democratic lawmaker in a politically motivated attack. US President Donald Trump and other world leaders have arrived in Canada for the G7 summit, where the intensifying Iran-Israel conflict is expected to top the agenda. On the sidelines of the summit, Canadian Prime Minister also met British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, and the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. With Starmer, Carney is said to have discussed the tensions in West Asia and their support for Ukraine. They also announced further collaboration on trade and technology. They also agreed to strengthen defense cooperation. Ramaphosa and Carney are said to have agreed to enhance economic cooperation between the two states, with Australian Prime Minister Albanese furthering partnerships on critical minerals was discussed, with both leaders vowed to deepen their bilateral relationships. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese will meet US President Donald Trump for the first time in Calgary. On the sidelines of the G7 summit, talks are expected to focus on tariffs and the US snap review of the AUKUS nuclear submarine deal with Australia. Now we move on to the Middle East. The US ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, confirmed minor damage to a Tel Aviv embassy building from a nearby Iranian missile strike, with no injuries reported. The Jerusalem embassy remains closed under shelter-in-place orders as tensions escalate following Israel's strikes inside Iran, raising fears of wider conflict. Israeli Defense Minister Katz warned Tehran residents will pay the price for Iranian missile attacks on Israeli civilians. He condemned Iran's strikes and vowed Israel's offensive will continue strongly. Israel's emergency services report 24 people dead and over 97 injured after a missile strike. A residential building in Haifa was hit and fires broke out near a northern power plant. Israeli military says an interception was carried out using the Barak Magan air defense systems for the first time. Iran has called on the IAEA to condemn Israel's strikes on its nuclear sites. Tehran also urged European powers to halt Israel's attacks. Meanwhile, Iran's top judge has vowed swift trials for suspected Israeli collaborators as the deadly conflict between the two enemies enters its fourth day. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has called for national unity amid escalating Israeli strikes, urging all factions to set aside differences and stand together against what he called genocidal aggression. These statements come as Iran launched a fresh salvo of missiles on Israel, striking Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Jerusalem in the early hours of today. In response to the strikes, Israel's Air Force struck Iran's Quds Force headquarters in Tehran. These sites were reportedly used to plan operations through proxies. The Israeli military also confirmed strikes on surface-to-surface missile sites in central Iran. IDF jets remain active over Iranian airspace. Tehran says 224 people have died in Israeli strikes since Friday, most of them being civilians. Tensions escalate as both sides launch new strikes. The region remains on high alert. The world is responding to Israel-Iran tensions. China has called on Iran and Israel to take immediate steps to reduce tensions. Beijing urges both sides to exercise restraint and avoid further escalation. The Chinese government emphasizes the importance of dialogue to maintain regional stability. The European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says Iran must never acquire nuclear weapons. After speaking to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, she stressed both sides agree on that. She added that a negotiated solution remains the best long-term path for peace. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump, before departing for the G7 summit, said Iran and Israel may need to fight it out before a deal can be reached, though he maintained that Washington continues to support Israel's right to defend itself. A senior U.S. official confirmed Trump vetoed an Israeli plan to assassinate Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei. French President Emmanuel Macron dismissed the idea of Russia mediating, citing Moscow's ongoing violations in Ukraine. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Macron have also said their countries did not participate in Israel's operations against Iran. An Air India Dreamliner bound for New Delhi was forced to return to Hong Kong today, just an hour after takeoff. The pilot suspected a technical issue mid-air. The incident involved a Boeing 787-8, the same model that crashed in Ahmedabad last week, killing over 270 people. That flight, AI-171, was headed to London but went down moments after takeoff, smashing into a residential complex next to a hospital. Investigators have recorded both the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, the black box, from the wreckage. Experts say this is crucial to understanding why the crash occurred. A U.S. team from the NTSB and officials from Boeing and the FAA are also part of the probe, given the aircraft's American origin. India's Air Safety Bureau is leading this investigation, while the government panel has been tasked with proposing new safety protocols. The high-level committee will meet for the first time today and submit a report in 3 months. Meanwhile, families continue to grieve. Only one passenger survived. Doctors have identified 87 bodies so far. Former Gujarat Chief Minister Vijay Rupani was among the dead. He'll be laid to rest with full state honors, but for many families, they wait for the DNA results and closure continues. Let us listen in to what the doctor at the Ahmedabad Civil Hospital had to say.
एयर इंडिया एयरक्राफ्ट होनारत में सिविल हॉस्पिटल में आए हुए मृतकों के शव में से 92 शव की डीएनए मैचिंग हो चुकी है. 92 of which the individuals are 87 because there is duplication. हमारे यहाँ से शव ले जाने वाले की संख्या 47 है. बाकी जो पेंडिंग है उसमें से 13 लोग अभी D4 में वेटिंग में चल रहे हैं. दूसरे 2 घंटे में 8 लोग और आ रहे हैं. दूसरे शव की या दूसरे रिश्तेदार की डीएनए कंफर्मेशन के लिए वेट कर रहे हैं. वैसे हमारे पास यहाँ पर 12 लोग हैं और फैमिली के साथ डिस्कशन करके आने वाले 11 लोग हैं.
Now we have guests joining us for this discussion. Wandana Singh, she's an aviation expert. She's joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you, Wandana, for joining us today. How significant is India's aviation regulators' order to inspect all Boeing 787s in the country in operation? Is this a typical post-crash protocol according to you?
Actually, yes, in the wake of this seriousness, because this has been a crash we are witnessing after many, many years. The earlier crash was in the early 90s, which happened also close by New Delhi in a place called Chakri Dadri, where entire 240 passengers perished because it was a Saudi Arabian Airlines passenger jet that crashed with a cargo aircraft that was incoming. After that mid-air crash, this crash has been a very, very serious one, and it's happened after good 30 years. So having said that, it's very significant. The government is looking into this very seriously, and as you have rightfully said and heard, there is a proper probe committee that's sitting aside the investigating authorities that have come in from Boeing, from US, from UK, the Directorate General Civil Aviation Bureau, its officials. Apart from that, we have at the Indian government, the Home Secretary level, heading another joint committee with at least 8 or 9 other joint secretaries involved in it and top level officials including police and Gujarat state government where the crash occurred. So yes, it is a very serious incident and the government is taking it very, very seriously because this has happened after many years that India has had to face. Over to you.
And expanding on what you just said, how concerning is it that two separate incidents involved the same Boeing 787 model in such a short time frame? What kind of strain does this place on Boeing's reputation, especially with the 737 MAX history still being fresh?
Exactly, and that is also one of the meetings that I was attending earlier in the day here. That is being questioned, and also what is being questioned is certain third-party suppliers which are providing parts to Boeing, including the ones coming from Italy and other places. And how are the inspections done? What is the quality assurance? What is the audit on these, things that are brought in? So definitely, Boeing has to make sure that its quality is of top class. Otherwise, the first watchdogs that we said are the insurance companies themselves who are looking at it. And then there is the Senate, which is sitting, and the FAA, which are watching. So Boeing's reputation is paramount, and I'm sure that Boeing will do everything to make sure that its components are of quality. So there have been a series of now incidents that we are hearing of. One is this one that you're talking about, this flight returning on the road of Hong Kong. Then, or landing in Hong Kong. Then there was a bomb threat. That was yesterday, which was found in one of the lavatories in a Phuket India flight, Phuket New Delhi flight. So the aircraft come back to Phuket, and of course this crash itself that happened, which has been catastrophic. So Boeing really needs to check its own third-party suppliers, where certain parts are coming, its own safety and security, and all of its instruments that are going into the making of various equipments, such as 787s or other equipments that are coming in the future. Don't forget that just last year we had a Starliner that was stuck, with Sunita Williams inside it, and that could not come back. We all remember that when she was stuck in space for 6 months, till SpaceX, of course, went and rescued the two astronauts. So there's a lot of work that Boeing has to do, and the government is closely monitoring it.
And Wandana, that brings me to this question further. How can global aviation authorities collaborate to ensure consistent aircraft maintenance standards across carriers like Boeing for this case?
You're absolutely right. It's a very inclusive approach that the global aviation bodies have to take, and we are inclusive in that. And we know that there are two giants, one is Boeing and one is Airbus. And it's very important that the safety and security aspect, the quality assurance aspect, the technique itself, the engineering itself, all of these factors are taken on inclusively, and continuous, I should say, checks be done of various equipments. For example, now in India, we believe out of the 33 equipments, 23 have been already checked, and there are some pending inspection. But this is something that has to happen globally. And not just that, there has to be rigorous audit, and sometimes there has to be surprise audit to make sure that everything of the equipment is fine and in place and the checks are done. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Wandana Singh, for bringing your expertise as an aviation expert to our conversation today. Now we move on to our next story. In India's western city of Pune, rescue teams are still searching for people trapped under the rubble of a collapsed bridge. The tragedy struck on Sunday evening when a bridge over the Indrayani River gave way, sweeping scores of tourists into the water. Officials confirmed that 4 people have died, while several others remain missing. Let us listen in to what the rescue team officer had to say.
तकरीबन 3 से 4 आदमी अंदर फंसे हुए ऐसी इंफॉर्मेशन जो लोकल है वहाँ से इंफॉर्मेशन मिली है। तो इसके हिसाब से अभी जो गवर्नमेंट का जो भी रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशन है उसके हिसाब से सर्च ऑपरेशन अभी स्टार्ट करने वाले हैं। थोड़ी देर में सब जो भी रिलेटेड लोग हैं वो यहाँ पे आने के बाद सब रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन स्टार्ट होंगे।
50 people have been pulled to safety, according to the district collector. 7 of them are now in critical condition and being treated in the intensive care unit of a local hospital. Rescue operations are ongoing with divers and emergency crews working around the clock to locate the missing. Let us listen in to what the district collector had to say.
यहाँ पे अथरो हॉस्पिटल में 7 पेशेंट आईसीयू में एडमिटेड हैं। उनकी परिस्थिति का अभी अंदाज़ा लिया गया है। डॉक्टर के हिसाब से 6 पेशेंट डेंजर जोन से बाहर हैं। एक जो पेशेंट हमें काफ़ी देरी से मिला था उसकी परिस्थिति क्रिटिकल है, लेकिन एज ऑफ नाउ स्टेबल है। टोटल मिला के अभी तक 50 लोगों को रेस्क्यू किया जा चुका है। अनफॉर्चुनेटली 4 लोगों की मृत्यु हुई है।
The collapse has raised questions about safety measures as authorities work to determine what caused the bridge to fail during peak tourist hours. Local officials have promised a full investigation into the incident. Now we move on to another story. The U.S. aircraft carrier USS Nimmits has left the South China Sea and is heading to west. Ship tracking data shows its course pointing towards the Middle East. This comes after a planned port call in Vietnam's Da Nang city was cancelled. Sources say a formal reception scheduled for June 20th was called off due to an emergent operational requirement. The U.S. Embassy in Hanoi has not commented. Last week, the Nimmits conducted maritime security operations in the region. Its westward move now signals a shift amid escalating tensions between Israel and Iran in the Middle East. Now we stay on Asia. China is keeping silent on a new think tank report claiming it has the world's fastest growing nuclear arsenal. Responding to questions, a foreign ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun said China follows a strategy of self-defense and maintains its nuclear force at a minimum level for national security. Beijing insists it does not seek to join any arms race. The comments come amid growing global concerns over China's military buildup. While the report has raised alarms, China has offered no direct rebuttal or comment on the data itself. Pressure mounts as tensions rise in multiple geopolitical hotspots around the world. Now we move on to Europe. MI6 has appointed a woman to lead the agency for the first time in its 116-year history. Blaise Metrivelli will become the 18th chief of the Secret Intelligence Service later this year, replacing Richard Moore. Metrivelli joined MI6 in 1999 and currently serves as Director General Q, overseeing the service's technology and innovation division. Metrivelli said she was proud and honored to take on the role, adding that she looks forward to continuing the mission alongside MI6 officers and international partners. Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the appointment historic and praised the intelligence service's growing importance in today's global climate. Metrivelli also held senior positions in MI5 and has worked extensively in the Middle East as well as Europe. Now we move on to North America. Tragedy strikes West Virginia as flash floods kill at least 5 people, including a 3-year-old child. Torrential rain hit Wheeling Saturday night, with up to 4 inches falling in just 30 minutes. triggering deadly flooding. Rescue teams are still searching for 3 missing individuals. Emergency services were overwhelmed as roads, bridges, and highways were damaged, delaying response efforts. Vehicles were swept into creeks. A mobile home caught fire, and some residents were forced to climb trees to escape rising waters. Ohio Country Emergency Management Director Lou Wargo called it the worst flooding he's seen in 35 years. Meanwhile, in Fairmont, heavy flooding Sunday caused an apartment building to partially collapse, forcing residents to evacuate. 1 woman lost home belongings and pet dog. The storm has left thousands without power and widespread destruction in its wake. Authorities warn of ongoing danger as recovery efforts continue and more rain is expected in the region. Now we move on to Asia. South Korea will unveil a second supplementary budget this Thursday. The move follows a $10.13 billion package passed in May. The new plan targets economic strains caused by the U.S. tariffs and weak consumer spendings. President Lee Jae-myung supports more government spending to boost demand. The budget will include relief for food prices and oil tax cut extensions through August. Import quotas and financial aid will help ease living costs. Tax breaks on vehicle purchases will continue through the year. The central bank cut its 2025 growth outlook to just 0.8%. Consumer inflation fell to 1.9% in May, below forecasts. Tragedy has struck a community celebration in the United States. 3 people, including a child and a woman, were killed during a shooting at Utah's West Fest on Sunday. Police in West Valley City say an argument broke out between 2 groups at the festival. As police officers approached, a 16-year-old pulled out a gun and opened fire. An 18-year-old man, a 41-year-old woman who was a bystander, and an 8-month-old infant lost their lives. An officer fired at the suspect but did not hit him. The teen was later taken into custody. Westfest is a popular annual event celebrating the diverse cultures of West Valley City. This year's festival ended in a heartbreak. Investigations are now underway into what led to this deadly outbreak of violence. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.